I'm going to do a few videos on this channel about my experiences with other YouTubers. And I'm going to start with this gentleman because he lives in the same state I do. And his YouTube channel is Ebomey. You might want to check him out. I'll put a link down below. And the first time I went to see him, if you've watched his other channel, you know that he likes to kind of tell stories sometimes, and I'm not too sure if they're all credible or not. And so I was at his place, and he was telling me that he knew Donald Trump, and so I had to call him on that. I don't think you know Donald Trump. And he says, "Oh yeah, I do." I said, "I'm sure you do." And he says, "No, I'll prove it to you. We'll get in the truck right now. We'll drive to Washington and I'll prove it to you." I said, "Fine, let's do that." So we got in his truck. We drove to Washington. We were outside the White House and we talked to the guard there. And a few minutes later, we see from the Oval Office Donald Trump waving his hand. And the next thing I knew, there we were inside of the White House and Donald Trump was giving us a tour. I couldn't believe it. So we were leaving there, and I was going to make good on my part of the deal. I said I'd buy dinner and the beer. And so there we were sitting there eating dinner after having a few beers, and he said, "Yeah, I met him through the Queen of England." And I said, "Get out of here." He said, "No, yeah, I met Donald Trump through the Queen of England." And I said, You don't know the Queen of England. You may know Donald Trump, but you don't know the Queen of England." He says, "Well, you pay for the airfare, I'll prove it." I said, "Fine, I will." And we got on a plane. Next thing you know, we're in front of Buckingham Palace and talking to the guard. And the next thing I knew, the Queen of England came out and threw her arms around Ebomey. I couldn't believe it. So, once again, yeah, I was buying him dinner and some beers. And we're sitting there in this pub, and he goes, "Yeah, well, I really met the Queen through the Pope." I said, "Okay, that's it. There's no way you know the Pope." He goes, "Oh, yeah, I do." And I said, "Well, fine, we're not that far from Rome. We're going to go over and you're going to prove this because I don't believe it." We get over to the Vatican, and there's just people everywhere standing outside the Vatican, and he says, "Give me a few minutes. I got to go up here and talk to this Swiss guard and see if we can get in." And I said, "Yeah, fine. You go do that." And I'm standing there next to this gentleman. And about 15, 20 minutes later, all of a sudden, in this little tiny balcony, out come these two people. It was a long distance from where I was. My eyesight's not that good anymore. And I said to the fellow next to me, I said, Can you see who's on the balcony there?" And he goes, "Yep." And I said, "Well, who is it?" He says, "Well, I don't know who the one guy is with the skull cap, but the guy with the big red nose, that's Ebomey."